Hello, soccer families. This is Oshkosh United Director Coaching Matt Callahan, and today I'm going to talk about Play On. Play On is the return to play protocol that we were given by the Wisconsin Youth Soccer Association. Play On was created by U.S. Soccer along with the guidance of medical professionals. The Play On protocol has 4 phases. As of June 1st, all Wisconsin Youth Soccer clubs are in Phase 1. The Wisconsin Youth Soccer Association will determine when clubs can move on to the next phase. They have warned us, though, that clubs also need to be prepared if there's clusters of cases to move back a phase as well. So they provided general guidelines of when we'll get to move on to the next phase. But again, WISL will make that call depending on the local health conditions when the clubs get to move on. This is a quick overview of the different phases. As I said, we're currently in Phase 1. So Phase 0 is stay in shelter at home. We're in Phase 1, which will allow for individual and small group training. We're going to get into that in the following slides as to what that means. The suggested duration is 4 to 6 weeks. Again, it could be shorter than that. It could be longer than that, depending upon the local health conditions. Once we move on to Phase 2, we go from individual and small group training to full team training. Again, the duration of that is 3 to 6 weeks. That's a suggested duration dictated by local health conditions. We're really looking forward to Phase 3, and we're hoping, looking at the timeline, that we'll be hitting Phase 3 for our fall season. And in Phase 3, we can have full team competitions and tournaments can resume. And then Phase 4, at that point, COVID-19 is no longer an issue, and there's absolutely no restrictions whatsoever. So here are some of the guidelines that we'll be following in Phase 1. In Phase 1, we can have a maximum of 9 players and 1 coach at each training. The training groups will remain the same throughout Phase 1. And Phase 1 will have activities in which the players are 6 feet apart at all times. We'll also stagger the start and end times of training. We'll have a little block of time between trainings to give the players that are finishing a training time to get off the field before the next group of players will enter a field. Parents, unfortunately, are not going to be able to attend training sessions during Phase 1, so we can meet our 9 players and 1 coach protocol. If parents, they can certainly hang around the training facility, but they're recommended by U.S. Soccer to stay in their car and to be socially distant throughout that time. The players cannot have any physical contact during Phase 1. I'd like to stress that. In the next slide, we'll go through what a sample practice might be like, but they'll need to be 6 feet apart at all times when they show up. They'll have a spaced out place to put their bag and their water bottle, and then they'll stay 6 feet apart from the other players at all times throughout the training. Training gear will not be shared during Phase 1. So, for example, practice vests or pennies will not be shared from one player to the next. Players will not be allowed to throw the ball in or to head the ball during Phase 1. And all of the players will have attendance tracking. So the club will be keeping track of every player that's at every practice. In the unlikely event that someone does test positive for COVID-19, then the club would be able to reach out and to notify everyone in a confidential way of which teams would be affected by that positive diagnosis. Players on a daily basis will have to answer some health questions, and they'll have a temperature check before they can enter the training facility. We're going to have our coaches wear masks at all times, and coaches will also disinfect any equipment that they use, like cones, before and after practice to avoid any germ transmission as well. There will not be restrooms available during Phase 1. If restrooms were available, our guidelines, we would have to be cleaning them after every use. We don't quite have the staff to do that at this point, so we're just asking players to use the restroom before they come to practice. Now, this is a sample practice plan that has been provided to us from Wisconsin Youth Soccer. You can see in it here in that first diagram Players are in a grid, and there is a distance of 2 yards, which is 6 feet, in between each grid. So that way the players can have some individual skill work and some skill training while being socially distant throughout the training session. Obviously, there's lots of different ways that we could run practices while keeping the players socially distant, but that's just one example that has been provided to us from the Wisconsin Youth Soccer Association. So Oshkosh United, we will be having some phase 1 training. The training is completely optional for players to participate in. We're planning on having 6 weeks of training, hoping to start June 15th or as close to that date as possible. And we'll be having trainings twice a week, which that will take us right up towards the end of July, which, the last day of July is the end of the soccer season, and then August 1st would be the start of the next soccer year. So any training we have will have to be completed by the end of July. The trainings will take place at city parks and other locations like church fields. We'll be having online registration. Will be open immediately. Families are only going to have a few days to register online because once families register, we'll then create training groups based upon registrations. So as I said earlier, each training group can have a maximum of 9 players. So if you had a team of 18 players and everyone wanted to play, we would just have 2 groups of 9. Depending on the situations, though, we don't want to have a training group with only 2 people in it. So depending upon how many players sign up, we may need to slide players around to different training groups. Some coaches are coming back. Some coaches can't return at this point. So your training group might be similar to your team. It might not. And you may or may not have your regular team coach for the training. Once we sort that out, then we'll have all the coaches get a field reservation, and then we'll release the practice schedules ASAP. So it's going to be a pretty quick turnaround here, which is why the registration period needs to be so short, so that way we can sort out the training groups and then the practice schedules. The cost for this for our academy players would be $40, and for a U11 and older player, it would be $55. Now, we absolutely realize, though, that different families and different players have different comfort levels and mentalities of when they're ready to return. So we want to be super upfront and let you know a few things. First and foremost being that you have options. We're going to continue to hold our weekly Zoom trainings. Those are on Thursday nights from 6 to 7 for U9 to U11 players, and then from 7 to 7:45 for our U13 and older players. So you could certainly email me, matt@oshkoshunited.com, and I can get you the information to get the link to our weekly Zoom trainings. We also have our YouTube channel, and each week on our YouTube channel, we're releasing a new playlist that has some information on how to do a particular skill, and then some games and activities you could play in your backyard to work on and refine that skill. So those are both options that you have. And if you have any younger siblings, very shortly we'll be releasing a Oshkosh United at Home rec program, which will have about 15 to 20 fun games that you could play in the backyard with your family, similar to what we'd be doing with the U6 or U8 rec program. I want to reiterate that players are not going to be punished in any way for not participating in in-person training. I know we have tryouts coming up. I would absolutely advise the players to be doing something. Again, taking advantage of the Zoom trainings or the videos on the YouTube channel or the in-person training. They certainly don't need to do all 3, but I hope they could at least do one of those to stay engaged. But absolutely, if a player does not feel comfortable coming to an in-person training, or a family doesn't feel comfortable having the player come to an in-person training, they can certainly take advantage of those other opportunities. You can get more information, a lot more detailed information, if you go to our website. On our front page, we'll have a link to a return to play page. You can also just go directly to ussoccer.com/playon. Right now, they only have guidelines for phase one. As they're developed, they'll be updating their website and adding guidelines for phase two and so on. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to our administrators at the club. Sarah Noe is our club president. She'll be our COVID-19 main contact. So if you have questions about the procedures that the club will be following, if there's a health issue, or if there's a concern with training, you can always reach out to Sarah Noe. Her email is on our website. And again, my name's Matt Callahan. I'm the director of coaching. If you have any questions about the soccer programs we have, always reach out to me as well. Thanks for tuning into this presentation. I cannot wait until we get to phase three. When I look at the picture here of these players smiling and interacting and having fun, I think that's the kind of the purpose of Play On. It's going to get us through these next couple months, and then I certainly hope in the fall season we can have a lot more pictures like this where the players are hanging out, interacting, and getting to play the game of soccer that we're used to seeing. If you have any questions, though, don't hesitate to reach out. Otherwise, thanks and have a great day.